Good. Then, welcome to another episode of the King of Weighted Calisthenics Coaching Cues podcast. Maybe we need to shorten that title somewhere in the future a bit. Today, small Q&A because we couldn't agree on a topic that fast. And I just started an Instagram Q&A and we have a couple of questions here. And I thought we just ask each other those questions one after another and see if we can answer it. And I have the first one for you. What's your abs routine, Lois?
My what?
Your abs routine.
My abs routine. Yeah, so basically I'm not training abs. But when it comes to training abs, you don't have to train them directly. If you're doing compound movements like squats, deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, where you need to stabilize your core. So doing plenty of repetitions on sit-ups won't really strengthen your core, since your core is made to stabilize and not to endure. And therefore, my greatest advice when I implement some core exercises, work on your core stability. This is the best cue that I can give you, especially if you are into calisthenics. We've got some really good movements, such as the hollow body hold, for example, but also ab wheel rollouts are a good possibility to train your abs.
So there's one exception I would like to throw in, and that is if you want to grow them.
Sure, if you have a hypertrophy.
So if you want to have them like more in that 3D look popping out, then of course dynamic training is superior to stability training. Yeah. Good. Yeah, choose one. There are a couple of them in.
How important is bracing in weighted calisthenics?
I would say definitely underrated skill. So it's very important because if you're not bracing, you are creating usually with pull-ups and dips like horizontal movements. Because if you're stable in the core and you have a good vertical bar path that works in most of the cases way better with a loose core that tends to be more likely to swing. So good bracing increases performance by verticalizing the weight path for weighted pulls, weighted dips, and definitely for muscle ups to pull in one stiff unit, a good bracing is also key to performance. With squat also, it's important. It's very important.
So I would say bracing is the most important and foremost thing that you need to learn if you really want to lift heavy and lift
all the heavy lifts have this in common.
Safely heavy. Yeah. So if you really want to ensure that you don't get any problems with your lower back or with your hips, then working on your bracing is definitely key to your success.
Okay, let's see if we have a tricky one. Can you scratch all of the areas on your back still?
I just read that one and I wanted to ask you. So I think I am able to, but I've got pretty good.
Can you keep the hands touching?
Yeah, I can do that. So as you can see here. So I've got pretty good mobility and yeah.
So yeah, we both can scratch every area of our back.
Yeah, I think so.
So at least while shampooing myself, I feel that I'm doing a good job.
All right. So next up. All right. Difference between thumb around and thumb over grip for pull-ups.
So like this grip or thumb around, like suicide grip style. For pull-ups, difference not too big. probably just what you started with, and what feels more stable for you. The main advantage that I feel for thumb around is when you want to grip in a stable force grip, that feels easier for me if I can like really grab around. But of course, this also works with a suicide grip. We in the King of Weighted coaching always teach our athletes to have the thumb around, because it's easier to have the carryover to muscle ups when you're used to this finger position. That's why we are using it. But in the end, I would say if you're not have super tight and limited mobility, then both grips.
All right, I
Are
would
good.
dig a little bit deeper into this one, since with the semi-false grip that we're using with this deeper grip, you have a much better force production in most cases. But the thing is also, you're going to stress your elbow flexors a lot. So
I mean, but false grip also works with thumb above.
yeah,
Not as good,
not as good,
but it
yeah.
also
Yeah.
works. Yeah.
But I guess here the grip is really without the thumb around the bar and really hanging like this, and not like with a false grip. So if you're really experiencing elbow pain, then the smarter decision is definitely to go for this kind of hook grip, suicide grip, because you're simply not flexing your forearm flexors as much, and these can get tight quite easily and therefore contribute to your pain. And most of the time, also, the lat feeling might be a little bit better in the thumb over the bar grip, because you're you're taking out the forearm activation and you're mainly driving the force via your elbows. And then, since the lat is attached on the upper arm, you will feel the lats a tiny bit better.
Then, how do you currently distribute your routines? I think it's meant over like a microcycle over a week.
So
Basically, a
currently,
split question.
yeah, when it comes to my training split, currently I'm using an upper, lower, rest, upper, rest, full body split. So I'm training 4 times per week with 3 rest days. I've got 1.5 lower body sessions and 2.5 upper body sessions per week, which means I'm training my pull and push main lifts on a frequency of 3. This is what I'm actually playing around with. And for the lower body exercises, I'm having a frequency of 2 for the main lift and a little bit of assistance added on. But yeah, I'm training highly specific to increasing my strength in pull-ups, dips, and the squat.
Same.
Yeah. So
Exactly the same.
awesome. But there is no best split. The best split is the one that works for you. And
We should make an episode about this, because I'm really ranting about that question. Like, what is the best split? We're gonna do a separate episode about, because the split is like usually a consequence of something else, and not something that makes up a good program or not. But yeah, different story.
so next question. Is it bad to bring the legs forward a bit when doing heavy pull-ups?
Not at all. That's a regular compensation mechanism that the body does to increase your performance on the top portion of the lift. When we're looking at the lats, it's coming somewhere here, attachment on the upper arm, going down the back and over some fascia connective tissue. It's attached to our hips. And if we're bringing the legs forward, we are kind of over the hips, stretching the lat, longer muscle, stronger muscle, meaning that you're just increasing the force potential on the upper portion of the lift. So for performance-related pull-ups, a bit of this forward drive of the legs is definitely beneficial. If we're looking at movements where you want to have a high amount of peak contraction in your back, for whatever reasons, like there are several reasons where this can make sense, then you should avoid it. Because then you're aiming for a high peak contraction. If you're letting the legs move forward, you're having everything but a good peak contraction. Oh.
Yeah, sounds good to me. It's your turn again.
You could think we are doing this for a living. Okay.
Maybe we do.
So I just refreshed it, and the newest question was best schedule for street lifters, which is in the end again the split question.
So yeah,
definitely
that's definitely the most asked question that you read across the internet, and
yeah,
we will do a whole
an
session
episode
on that one. Yeah.
So I should ask you. Now we have a question, and that is, I need to translate it. It's a German question. During the dip, the shoulders are always shrugging close to the ears, and I think it was not a question, but I think the question behind it is, how can you avoid it?
So when the shoulders are shrugging up towards your ears during the downward phase of the dip, most of the time this is a lack of shoulder depression. So you're not stabilizing your shoulders properly, and when we are doing a dip, or what we understand under a dip, and we're always referring to this closed chest dip, where we have our rib cage slightly tucked in, our shoulders protracted, and we have our shoulders on tension during the downward phase. And when you do not have this closed chest position and you protract your scapula, and of course depress it, and you're in it like this here, so very loose, you definitely lose your shoulder stability on the way down, and that's also why the shoulders tend to come up. So what you should do to get rid of this is definitely working on your shoulder depression. You can work with dip shrugs, for example, strengthening the muscles surrounding the scapulas that are responsible for depressing your shoulders. And then, of course, practicing the dips with an appropriate form. So if you lose your depression right away, you're probably using too much weight. And you can't control it properly, so you probably need to regress, work with a regression like bodyweight dips, for example, and really try to
So the
improve.
thing behind that, again, is basically load management. So people often do not have a depression problem, but a too much load on the belt problem. Of course, if you're starting with bodyweight dips and that happens, you need to accept that form breakdown to a certain degree, because you just cannot change it, and then working with regressions makes a lot of sense, because there you can control it. I actually just wrote 3 pages about that topic today, so I'm pretty into it. Like what we see in the coaching is often 2 types of depression problems. The first one that Lois described, which is often a technical load management activation problem. So what you're doing about it is you're working with a reasonable weight, with a reasonable tempo in the dip, with pre-activation exercises like dip shrugs. You're like really programming that movement pattern, activating it, making people aware of doing it. And then we have simple strength problems, and especially with the dip, when we are working with athletes that are coming more from the calisthenics area, it's in so many cases just a too weak chest, as the chest is one of the main depressors. Can you say that in English? I'm not sure. Depressors in the dip, and in calisthenics, chest is not used that much. So that's a big problem. So then just taking your time building up the chest is a huge asset for an athlete. And the same thing is just getting an athlete aware of natural scapular movements and all other lifts. Like if you start to work with a proper flow of elevation to depression in your pull-ups, chin-ups, if you work with good form in push, like in all other movements that you're doing, if you're like really schooling the athletes in using proper scapular mechanics, then over like a really, really short time, this has a direct carryover, of course, also to the dips. So before integrating tons of assistance in the program, just think of doing what you're already doing with better quality. It's probably the first approach. And if that is not working because you really have activation issues, then we're starting with what you said, basically priming certain movement parts, isolating certain movement parts, and training that one.
So, but in general, we can say that the scapula is the limiting factor for most people and why they're not progressing in their calisthenics lifts or skills.
That's, because it's like, it really harms the weight you can put on the chain, and everyone wants to move a lot of weight.
And if you're not able to stabilize that area, you're
you're not going to dip very long.
Yeah,
also.
Exactly. So when you really want to try to improve your performance, work on your scapular strength.
Together with us. King of Weighted Coaching. Good. Okay, that's interesting. If you can sleep only 6 to 7 hours and you progress your workouts, will you still build muscles? So I think, like, let's put the question different and ask, how important is sleep for building muscle? I think that's easier to answer in this context.
Sleep is the most important thing. And
sleep is power.
That is actually one of the things that gets neglected very, very often, especially the whole recovery part, which is most of the time even more important than the training by itself. So if we're taking elite athletes as an example, so people who train for their life because it's their job, most of them, they sleep around 9 to 12 hours to really maximize their performance.
When was the last time you slept 12 hours?
Monday. But that was the first time in several months. And I immediately dropped a half kg of weight. So as you can see, it does wonders. And not just for trying to lose weight, but also for gaining weight. The more rest your body gets, the more likely you're not stressed, and stress is always a kind of interference in your body, whether that is mental stress or physical stress, that will affect your body's processes in some kind of way, and therefore also building muscle mass and losing weight will be way, way harder. So if you really want to step up on the next level, try to improve your sleep. That's the main thing that I would recommend to you.
Yeah, nothing to add. Sleep is power. But it's also the hardest to maintain.
Sure. Yeah. So, but building habits like going to sleep every day at the same time, and going to bed before midnight because we have the circadian rhythm, or due to the circadian rhythm, it's recommended to go to bed earlier than before midnight. And having a good routine and constant sleep patterns throughout will already accelerate or improve your sleep.
Nice. Then we have one last one. We have the last one for today. Here, that one just came in.
Is it possible to build upper/lower chest with weighted dips?
So, yes. Of course, it is possible, but by far not optimal. So we're looking at dips and the way the weighted calisthenics athletes are doing dip. The chest works in a very, very limited range of motion. So we have from this neutral position like, what is that, 60-degree shoulder extension, and that is the range the chest is working. So we have neither a good peak contraction nor a good stretch, which are two things that are highly related to a good hypertrophy stimulus. So the dip and the way that we are doing it is in general not an optimal chest exercise. Does that mean your chest won't grow? No. It gets a stimulus, but it's not optimal, of course, when we're looking at hypertrophy. Looking at the lower chest, the dip definitely has something to offer because the fibers are aligned pretty good with the movement. So probably lower chest can be worked pretty good if you're using a bit more stretch, if your shoulder can handle it. Upper chest, like the chest always, of course, works in one unit, so also the upper chest gets a bit of stimulus. But when we're looking what the upper chest does, it's more like the like shoulder elevation, not shoulder elevation, shoulder flexion, like in front of the body, bringing the arm above the head. So from this part of range of motion to somewhere here or from the side. So work like overhead presses, incline bench presses, handstand push-up, pike push-ups variations. Those are more superior when it comes to building the upper chest with calisthenics or weights training. So in general, try not to focus on the dip when you are aiming for big titties. It can work for some, but from our experience working now with over 80 athletes, for the majority, dips will not grow a big chest.
So there are definitely better exercises out there to build a big chest. So because in the dip you need to take into account that you have to stabilize your whole body in the setup. So whereas example, if you do a chest press where you're sitting on a bench and you press, you have a lot of external stability, and you can really focus on hitting the muscle. And during the dip, you need to focus on way more other things, and therefore the dip is not the best exercise for chest hypertrophy or pec hypertrophy.
Do you think the community accept this? Probably
they
not.
Have to.
You have to.
So I would say we finish it here.
Exactly. So we forgot the coaching pitch in our first episode, so probably gonna do that now. So if you are looking to improve not only your chest muscle, but your whole weighted calisthenics performance, your physique, skill work, so everything that is related to advanced calisthenics and weighted calisthenics, you should definitely check out our website, kingofweighted-coaching.com. Schedule your free consulting call, and then we will see how we, with the entire team, can help you to achieve peak performance. So hopefully see you in the consulting call.
See you in the next one.